Views in the spotlight. Now this is thoughtful. Hello, I'm Trevor Lai in Shanghai. Savvy marketers in China know that data provided by web publishers about viewership and click-through rates can be inflated sometimes by the high double digits. What they don't know is how to get through this false information. We have some of China's top digital marketing experts here today to tell us how. Later, PT Black has got your number, and a thought or two. But first, we have Clement Tsang joining us as MediaMind's China Sales Director. Thanks for joining us today, Clement.
Thank you, Trevor.
Clement, how big is the gap between the real data and what publishers are providing to advertisers?
The global accepted standard is 15% discrepancy. Our experience is China tends to have 30% discrepancy, so that's double the global standard.
That's a huge gap.
That's right, it is.
And what would you attribute such a large discrepancy to specific to the China market?
The origin of this data discrepancy comes from the fact that China's dot-com boom settled a sales model from the publisher side where they were selling something like outdoor media. Cost per day, where the data becomes window dressing. It's not essential to the decision of purchasing the media.
So you're saying that 1 in every 3 basically results is fake?
Or elevated.
Which is a nicer word for fake.
That's another way of putting it, that's correct.
So how can advertisers tell the information that they're getting is even close to being factual? How do they verify anything?
Well, just like you purchase any product, you check the credibility of the source. Is it global? Is it certified by IAB or MRC? Are the reports automated? And just as any other product, who else is buying that? Who are your common customers? So if a global brand is using this service, maybe it's a good measure of the credibility of that source.
So you're talking about the credibility of the source rather than a specific metric. So
Correct.
there's not one metric that is better than another, viewership versus click-through rates.
Well, there's multiple metrics. You can reach up to 25 types. Again, it comes down to what is the level of education of the client, what is the sophistication of the media agency, and what is the end objective. So if you're doing brand awareness, you're probably more looking at video play rates, if that's the format you're looking. If you're trying to drive sales, you'll be looking at conversion. But ultimately, if you're a sophisticated marketer, you'll be looking at all of them, 30, 40 different metrics.
But that's a big if. If you're a sophisticated marketer in China, in your experience in China, have you seen a lot of the advertisers actually spending the time and the money to do this due diligence before they dive headfirst into digital marketing?
Innovative brands are the same in any sector. You'll always have the top 10% leaders who will adopt, who will resource their team, will resource their technology to offer all of that data. They'll also spend the time to analyze it and from there optimize their performance. You'll always have the laggards as well. So that's essentially, it's the same everywhere in the world, including China.
But in China, what would be more specific would be the top 10% of these so-called leaders that you're talking about. What percentage of those would actually be Chinese domestic companies versus the more savvy international ones?
I'd say very few, very few. The leaders in data analytics would be global brands.
And so is this something that media agencies are actively trying to educate their clients about, or this is not something that they think they can turn around?
I think the complexity of just marketing activities as it is today on traditional plus traditional digital are overwhelming media agencies. They have a lack of talent. There's a lot of churn and knowledge management. There's key issues there driving that business model. In addition to that, you have this new layer of mobile digital, which compounds the amount of functional and operational work that these media agencies need to perform.
And is the data just as suspect for the mobile area as well?
Well, actually, with the growth of mobile internet, the functions and the technology can actually offer brands a closer relationship to the end audience. The key issue now is there's not enough spending in mobile, and in addition to that, there's no real experts in China on mobile. Everything is more tactical, it's more sales focused, but at the end of the day, one marketer looking at digital, traditional plus mobile, that's a lot of data. And just dealing with creative and rolling it out, again, that's the China problem.
Well, Clement, thanks very much for joining us today. And now here's PT Black with a thought or two by the numbers.
Digital marketers are not the first to comment on the difficulty of gathering data in China. They make a fair point that things are very complicated here. But actually, they have it easy. Think getting viewership numbers are hard? Imagine what it was like during the imperial time, gathering a census or collecting taxes. One of my favorite stories from China's imperial past is in fact a story of data verification and gathering. In the mid-18th century, in the Qing dynasty, Emperor Qianlong got suspicious of the data and reports the bureaucracy was funneling up to him. The prototypical hands-on CEO, he made a habit of leaving the palace in disguise and taking a first-hand look at what was happening. Switching positions with his aide, Qianlong dressed as a serving man so he could make observations without interference. Together they traveled through the country, especially southern China, where the distance and complexity made data even less reliable. Qianlong's southern tours are legendary to this day, but they are not a tour of an emperor reaching out to his people so much as they are fueled by deep suspicion of data. Even now, people in southern China commemorate this imperial audit in everyday life. They tap their fingers on the table when poured tea. That's a reference to a compromise made between the nobly dressed aide and the disguised emperor, which allowed the aide to avoid throwing himself on the ground in a bow when he was served by his ruler. So what does the story mean for us today? First of all, it's a reminder that gathering data is China's equivalent of the Holy Grail. Second, it reminds us of the importance of asking detailed questions. The vastness of China, there are different systems, different platforms, and each one of them is using different metrics for reporting information. You have to ask exactly what the definition of each term is. Taking anything for granted is a bad idea. Next, you should develop a gut check. That means you should ask your friends, your colleagues, and certainly ask skeptics. Check with a college student. Has she seen the work? Did she like it? One warning though, you can't rely on the person closest to you always. You can't ask taxi drivers to give you information about the latest hip marketing trends. Finally, be kind to your data gatherer. It can be a thankless and overwhelming job. But no need to bow. If a finger tap is good enough for Emperor Qianlong, it should be good enough for the analytics team.
Thanks, PT. With me now is Brent Cohen, China Managing Director of Wybrand Digital, Freddie Laker, Sapien Nitro's VP, Digital Strategy Asia, and Jimmy Poon, China CEO of Media Brands Ventures. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen.
No problem. Thank you.
False data destroys the value the digital industry purports to deliver, which damages the credibility and actually future of the entire industry, and puts it all at risk, and in fact, could put you guys out of a job. What can the industry do to fix this?
Not a lot of advertisers, or certainly not our clients, I think, are maybe aware that, quite as aware as they should be, that maybe things aren't recorded and as measured as they should be from a lot of these major media partners. So someone obviously needs to get up on a soapbox and start saying, hey, this is a real problem. At the same time, the problem with doing that in China is I think people are hesitant to draw the ire of these big players and be put on the blacklist.
But don't you think that this will happen almost naturally as the percent of total ad spend that goes digital increases? Mm-hmm. I mean, as it inches ever upward, there's more demand for that sort of accountability.
I think that's the natural way. So it's an inevitability this is going to happen. I'm saying if someone wants to create it now, someone is going to have to step up there and say, look, whether it's at that stage or not, really everyone needs to look at this space. There's a problem here.
So we've heard that the discrepancy rates in China are as high as 30%, 1 in 3. These types of results, I mean, who is creating this fudge factor? How is this possibly happening and being accepted by advertisers?
You got to think about it as part of the system. So from my point of view, again, we referenced earlier that, I mean, it's kind of the C-suite that's going to bring this maturity to the industry through numerous different methods. But if you start thinking about all the people below that are involved in the process, if I'm a mid-level marketing manager and effectively these media houses are making or platforms are making me look good because the traffic's good, why on earth would I want to make myself potentially look like my campaigns are not performing to my boss? So there's a system, there's almost oddly symbiotic system between these people who are kind of feeding it because no one wants to lose face.
Who wants to change a system that seems to be working for publisher and advertisers? They're getting the hits, they're getting the click-throughs, they're getting all that information that they said that they needed. The problem is that it's just not reliable.
Yeah, and so someone's going to get real at one point. And frankly, it's going to be one of the best things that ever happens to the industry. It's going to go through, I think, a point of go into flux where everyone's going to kind of freak out a little bit. It's going to bring a serious level of maturity to the industry. It's going to weed out the people who really don't know what they're talking about but are running their mouths a lot right now. And it's going to bring, I think, the best people to the top, the people who are genuinely performing.
I think search, why do people take it? I think that's become sort of a de facto standard for phase one. So the phase one of web marketing is about awareness. So there may be a little bit more of a fluffiness to it. But as commerce is coming into play, then the transparency is demanded.
One thing I'd love to add to this, just because I really feel like we've said a lot of things today that may seem like it's being very critical of the digital landscape in China. And the big prediction, and I've been kind of preaching as often as I can, that China is going to be the space to watch for the next 5 years, not because of its size, but I actually believe that a lot of the really cutting-edge innovations, they're actually going to originate in China, be born in China, and spread globally. And I think things like getting very stringent with metrics and forcing basically digital marketers here to innovate more and more and more to be successful in terms of engaging with consumers or other businesses, whether it be B2B or B2C, that this will actually help spur this further development and then being one of the leading digital spaces in the world. And I don't mean it, like I said, in size, I mean it in quality and innovation.
No, I agree. And that's part of this is nobody wants to say the emperor has no clothes. Okay, nobody wants to do that because it's everybody's benefiting.
Right.
I missed that one. I should have made that reference earlier. That's a good one.
But when we're talking about everyone, can we be more specific to say who else has their sort of fingers in the pie and could possibly be contributing to this fudging? Because literally, you're talking about mobilizing entire groups of different interested parties to accept these new standards.
One of the things I saw recently, so Vivacu's got this was audience on demand they've been talking about, which is something, these kind of concepts I think are fairly common in the West and they're becoming now more common in China. But effectively, a single delivery media platforms for delivering, let's say, display advertising that basically work across all these different advertising networks. And actually, as long as these platforms will allow them to embed their code in there, they actually can have true, hopefully realistic measurements. So I think some of these businesses, basically, some of these on-demand or audience-on-demand advertising platforms could really bring this stuff to light.
And I think you touched on the point there, which is open APIs. Yeah. When the publishers allow third-party players to hook into their API, that allows for the sort of metrics that we're talking about, the measurement, as well as additional tools that bring benefits to the publishers, as well as the advertisers, and make the publishing space more valuable too.
Well, Brent, Freddie, Jimmy, thanks a lot for joining us today on Thoughtful China. That wraps it up for this week. Be sure to subscribe to us on Tudo and YouTube and follow us on Weibo and Twitter. We'll see you again.